The fourth week of the college football season is in the books, and this Heisman race is really starting to get interesting. Through the first month of the season, there's already a number of players that have emerged as frontrunners, and I think this is going to be one of the tightest races we've seen in recent years. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the 10 players I have in my early Heisman top 10 after only week 4. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'll be posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. We're going to kick off today's list with a brand new player coming into my top 10, and that's Syracuse quarterback Garrett Shrader. Don't look now, but Syracuse is 4-0, and they're on the verge of being ranked inside the top 25, and that's largely due to the play of their quarterback. Shrader has been awesome through the first 4 games of the season, as he's thrown for 1,000 yards with 8 passing touchdowns and 1 interception. He's also added over 200 yards on the ground with 4 rushing touchdowns as well. After spending 2 years in Mississippi State, he transferred to Syracuse last season, where he appeared in 12 games, but the numbers he put up were pretty underwhelming. Fast forward to 2022, and he's been one of the better quarterbacks in the entire ACC. This past weekend in a win against Virginia, he threw for 300 yards and rushed in a touchdown. His best performance, though, came 2 weeks ago against Purdue, when he threw for 200 yards with 3 passing touchdowns, including leading a game-winning drive to pull out the victory. I don't know how much more of a run Syracuse has in them, but if they continue to win and Shrader continues to put up decent numbers, I gotta show some love to him. Spencer Sanders comes in at number 9. He had a bye this week, so nothing really changes from what I said last week. In 3 games this season for Oklahoma State, he's thrown for 900 yards with 10 passing touchdowns and only 1 interception. He's also added over 100 yards on the ground with 3 rushing scores as well. This is his 4th season as the starting quarterback for Oklahoma State, and he's on pace to shatter his previous season records. The only reason I don't have Spencer Sanders a little higher is considering who he's played. Through 3 games, Oklahoma State has played Central Michigan, Arizona State, and Arkansas Pine Bluff, so not the best competition. But as Big 12 play starts this week, hopefully Spencer Sanders is able to put up some good numbers and really emerge as a Heisman candidate. Coming in at number 8 is Minnesota running back Mohamed Ibrahim. The last couple of weeks, he's been my only running back inside my top 10, but actually, he's one of 2 running backs on my Heisman list this week, and there's actually another running back who I have 1 spot above him. But Ibrahim has been one of the best running backs in all of college football up until this point. Through 4 games so far this season, he's rushed for just under 600 yards, averaging 6.5 yards a carry with 8 rushing touchdowns. He's currently 2nd in the entire country in rushing yards and number 2 in the country in rushing touchdowns. This past weekend, in a dominating road win at Michigan State, he rushed for 100 yards with a rushing touchdown and 2 receptions for 20 yards. It was technically his worst game of the season, as it was his first game without at least 2 rushing touchdowns and his first game without at least 130 rushing yards. Like I mentioned though, he's been one of the top running backs in all of college football, and Minnesota is undefeated and ranked inside the top 25, making a push at a potential Big 10 title spot. At number 7 is the one running back I have slightly above Mo Ibrahim, and that's Michigan running back Blake Quorum. This is the first time all season Quorum has cracked my top 10, and it was long overdue. Through 4 games this season, he's averaging 7.5 yards per carry with 500 rushing yards. He's also rushed in 9 touchdowns as well. His 9 rushing touchdowns lead all of college football, and his 500 rushing yards are 4th in the Big 10. The reason he doesn't have more rushing yards is because the attempts just haven't been there. Through the first 3 weeks of the season, he had only 34 attempts. But this past weekend against Maryland, he nearly doubled that, having 30 rushing attempts that he turned into 250 rushing yards. For the game, he averaged 8 yards a carry and had 2 rushing touchdowns. This is coming off a performance against Connecticut in which he had 5 rushing touchdowns. At this point in the season, you can make the case that either Blake Quorum or Mohamed Ibrahim has been the best running back in all of college football. As of right now, I'm just giving the slight edge to Quorum just because of the last 2 weeks. Up next at number 6 is Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett. His numbers on the season are still looking really good as he's completing 74% of his passes for 1,200 yards. As of right now, Stetson Bennett is second in the SEC in pass completions with 92. He's first in the conference with a 74% completion percentage. He's also second in the conference with his 1,200 passing yards. This past weekend wasn't as flashy against Kent State as he didn't throw for a touchdown and threw his first interception of the season. He did total 300 yards for the day and added another rushing touchdown. As long as Georgia's winning games and Stetson Bennett is putting up solid numbers, he'll continue to be in my Heisman top 10. I had him at my number 1 spot last week, but after nearly losing this week and having a pretty bad game, I have Caleb Williams at number 5. So far on the season, he's completing 65% of his passes and has thrown for 1,000 yards with 9 touchdowns and no interceptions. He's also added 100 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. He was solid through the first 3 weeks of the season, but when he faced his first tough opponent in Oregon State, he essentially was non-existent. For the game, Caleb Williams completed only 44% of his passes for 180 yards. He threw a touchdown pass in the final minutes that gave USC the victory, but up until that point, he had no answer for Oregon State's defense. Now, I will give major props to the Beavers defense because they looked fantastic out there, but if you're Caleb Williams and you're a Heisman contender, this is a game in which you really need to have your Heisman moment, not finish the game with more incompletions than completions. I think he'll be fine, and I think he'll continue to climb back in my rankings, but after this performance, I had to move him down a few spots. At number 4 is Bryce Young, who continues to have an amazing season. He's completed 69% of his passes for over 1,000 yards with 13 passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He's also added 150 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. Against Vanderbilt this week, he had probably the best game of his season, throwing for just under 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. But it was Vanderbilt, so let's not buy too much stock into it. So far this season, Bryce Young has looked good against Utah State, Louisiana Monroe, and Vanderbilt, but in his game against Texas, he was a little shaky. His numbers are going to be fantastic once again this season, but until I see him have a really good game against a ranked opponent, I'm just going to hold him back just slightly. But if I were to guess, he'll likely finish top 3 at the end of the season. Moving up to number 3 on my list is Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker. He's been fantastic so far this season for the Vols. He's completing 71% of his passes and has thrown for 1,200 yards with 7 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. He's also added nearly 200 yards on the ground with 3 rushing scores. His passing efficiency rating of 180 is the best in the entire SEC. He had his best game of the season this weekend against Florida, as he essentially was the entire offense for Tennessee. He completed 22 of 28 passes for 350 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. He also rushed for 112 yards with a rushing score. Tennessee's had one of the best offenses in all of college football so far, and now they're ranked inside the top 10 of the AP poll. If Tennessee continues to win and makes a potential playoff push, while Hendon Hooker continues to light up the stat sheet, he very well could be a Heisman winner. I don't care what anyone has to say, but I have Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels coming in at number 2. He has the Jayhawks undefeated, and they should be ranked inside the top 25. But his Heisman campaign is off to a strong start, and he legitimately needs to be in the discussion. So far on the season, he's completing 71% of his passes for 900 yards. He's thrown 11 touchdowns with only 1 interception. On the ground, he's rushed for 330 yards with 4 rushing scores. This past weekend against Duke, he completed 82% of his passes for a season-high 325 yards and a season-high 4 passing touchdowns. He rushed for 90 yards, which surprisingly isn't the most he's had in a game this season. He also added a rushing score, the 3rd game he's had a rushing touchdown this year. Jalen Daniels has been probably the biggest surprise so far this season, while Kansas has probably been the biggest surprise team. He's putting up remarkable numbers and honestly needs to be in the Heisman discussion. If Kansas continues to keep this up and Jalen Daniels continues to light up the stat sheet and put up these incredible numbers, I genuinely think he's going to be a Heisman finalist at the end of the season. But moving to number 1 is Ohio State quarterback CJ Stroud. Through 4 games, he's completing 70% of his passes for 1,200 yards. He has 16 passing touchdowns with only 1 interception. After a bit of a shaky start to begin the season against Notre Dame, Stroud has been the best quarterback in college football over the last 3 weeks. This past weekend against a really good Wisconsin team, Stroud threw for just under 300 yards with 5 passing touchdowns. He's thrown 5 passing touchdowns in back-to-back weeks and has thrown 14 passing touchdowns over his last 3 games. He's also averaging nearly 350 passing yards a game since week 1. I talked about him all offseason, and CJ Stroud is my Heisman favorite entering the season. If he continues to put up these numbers, I think he's going to be... I know I talked about this being a very competitive Heisman race, but if CJ Stroud continues to put up these numbers and Ohio State continues to win, it just seems very unlikely that someone other than Stroud is going to win the Heisman Trophy. But like I mentioned, there are so many names that are legitimate candidates up to this point, and I do think this is going to be a really competitive and most importantly, fun Heisman race. Well, those are the 10 players I currently have in my Heisman race. Was there a player that I had ranked too high or a player ranked too low? Or was there a player that I didn't mention that should have cracked this list? Whoever you think it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you love college football, this is definitely the place for you. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm posting videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe if you call yourself a college football fan. Also, if you could drop a like on this video as well, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.